Hi, and welcome to the Literary Sipper. I'm Amber Beatty Hill, your host, and today we are going to talk about planning your retreat. And I like to think of the word retreat as in re-treat, that you are retreating yourself to something good. And for those of you who get the Parks and Rec reference, treat yourself, 2024, plan your time away. And it can look a million different ways, and that's kind of what we're going to get into today. Throughout the year, there are retreats that are focused on going away somewhere, going on vacation, Costa Rica yoga retreat, or come travel and walk the Irish moors or whatever and talk about poetry. And there are so many retreats that are these large scale adventures, and they can also hit differently in different times of the year. So in a summer retreat, it might be more about exploration, adventure, and a winter retreat might be something like a cabin in the woods where you don't see anybody, or you go on silent retreat. So the first sort of thing to get sorted is, what does a retreat look like for you? Because it's going to look different for you than other people, depending on the season you want to go on retreat, the season you are in your life. So do you have little children that you have to figure out who's going to take care of them while you go on retreat? Do you have aging parents? Do you have a really stressful job that just taking time off to tap into your creative self or go on retreat just seems impossible? And, your desires, your projects, your responsibilities, the money, the cost, what are you looking for, and what is it that you hope to get out of going away or taking this time to really hyper focus on your creative life? And so getting clear on those things is an important step. And I think that part of the discussion today is going to be sort of how to maybe do some journaling around that, or how to at least think about it as you try to put a retreat on your calendar for 2024 or 2025 coming up. But in any case, whatever you get out of this podcast episode and discussion, I hope you do take the time to really realize that you deserve time to focus on your creativity, and you deserve that in whatever form feels best for you. There's no one right way to retreat. And so take time to really think about what it is you need. And so the first question I would ask is, do you want this retreat to be a period of rest, a period of learning, or a period of productivity? Which one is calling to you at this moment? Is it the idea that you just want to be relaxing and maybe intaking? So reading a lot, seeing art, seeing a new country, seeing new people, listening to nature, being alone, being able to get good sleep. All of these things go into retreat. So rest can look like yoga. Rest can look like a really nice comfy bed in a cabin. Rest can look like time away from the city. But learning is part of it too. Do you hope to learn something? Do you want to go on retreat so that you can learn a new way of meditating, a new way of making jewelry, a new way of writing poetry? Is it so that you can internalize some new concepts, so that then when you go back to your work at your desk, that you've been on retreat to gather all of this information and then transform it into something else? Or is it retreat in the sense of productivity, like I am going to go on retreat so I only work on this one project and I'm not seduced and sidetracked by all of the other things that interest me? Maybe you're a jack of all trades and you play an instrument and you write and you draw and you really want to finish one project. So you look at your goal for the retreat as hyper-focused activity on one particular project, whether that be drafting a novel or getting a series of paintings together or writing a series of lectures that you're going to give, that productivity is focused so that when you get up in the morning, you know what it is you want to work on and you've already made that decision, because often the decision making is what carries the worry and the weight and the what ifs. And so if you make the decision before you even go on retreat, this is going to be a period of productivity on this project, then you don't even have to make a decision at all. Another question I would ask is, do you want to be alone? Do you want to be in community with other artists? Do you want to be stimulated, or do you want to be de-escalated? So these are sorts of, and they can be combinations. There's lots of retreats out there where you have part of it where you're in community with other people, and then you have your own room or your own space to write. But for some of us, that might just be overwhelming, because the idea of having to be social when you are producing or trying to produce are two different areas in our brain, and they don't always work. For some people, it's incredibly stimulating to be around other people, and you get ideas and you bounce your ideas off of other people, and you get to listen to their new thing, and you wonder if that would be a path you might like to take. And there's a lot of energy exchange that happens in those retreats where other people are there, but you have to think about what it is you want first and try to find the retreat that matches that. And so, for example, like if you are going traveling on a bus and you're going to do like a walking tour in England, and you're trying to do some nature writing while you are on that tour, that's a great way to pair sort of the adventure and community on one level with also this sort of private, personal goal, creative goal on another. But if you're someone who said, no, that is ridiculous. If I'm going to spend 7 hours hiking and talking to people all day, at night, I'm just going to collapse. I don't feel energized to do anything else. That took so much out of me. So knowing yourself, knowing what season you're in, and knowing what you want to get out of this retreat are essential to having a successful experience. And you might be able to plan 2 kinds of retreats in a year. You might have one that's like hyper-focused solo event, and you might have one that's more in community, and they can look very different from each other. One can be really cost effective, where you're just saying, you know what, my retreat is I'm going to go to my friend's house and go sit in their shed and work every day for a week, and that's going to be my retreat, and where I'm not around my things, I'm just in this space that's only for work. And I'm also going to, and it doesn't probably cost a lot of money. And then I'm also going to plan this large scale trip where I am intaking, and I'm going to have a road trip, and I'm going to experience some attractions and landscapes that I haven't experienced before, so that I can then use them in the work for the upcoming year. I mean, so that's kind of a basic one. Do you want to leave? Do you want to stay home? Which one? You know, which would feel more like a break and a going back into yourself, like the tides? You know, you're going out a little bit and you're coming back in a little bit. And which one is it that you want? Do you want to be the wave that moves outward, or do you want to be the wave that comes back in? And in that respect, you know, retreats can look very different as well. It might be something where the time in your life you're very busy and you can only take a morning to do retreat. So maybe you decide to do a meditation at a meditation center and then use the rest of the day as a coffee shop date with yourself. And it's a pledge to yourself to not think about anything else, only your project and only coming home to yourself. Those also function as retreats. Trying to be honest with yourself. Will you honor the time? So if you set your calendar and you've set up all of these experiences, especially even the smaller ones, in a way, more than the larger trips, we're more likely to honor something that's where you have to spend a lot of money and you're spending a lot of time and you've had to do a lot of planning. We're probably not going to let everyday to-dos get in the way of that. But if what you've done is sort of made maybe one of those exchanges with a friend with their studio space, you might back out of it last minute because it didn't cost you anything. It's not putting them out. You can talk yourself out of it very easily. And so how are you going to honor the time that you've set aside to retreat? Can you make it part of your weekly plan, your daily plan, your quarterly plan for yourself, the same way you do things like plan your workouts or plan your meals? Can you plan your retreat time? Can you plan this time that is just for you and keep coming back to it as just part of your routine? And in that way, that familiarity with going on retreat, after the first time you do it and you realize that the world hasn't fallen apart and you've gotten that rest or that learning or that productivity out of the experience, you're going to want to keep doing it. And hopefully it will become almost like an anniversary for you where you say, oh, in the fall, I do this, or in the winter, I do that, or at the turn of the year. And you can sort of have this ceremony around your retreat time and experience. Which vibe is going to be more inspiring to you? Do you want to be somewhere during the fall and winter where you are harvesting ideas, where you are getting cozy, where things are shutting down and the darkness feeds your creativity? Or are you someone who needs the sun and needs people and needs the part of that life that feeds that energy so you can keep a momentum going, an outward momentum going? Because that might also dictate when would be the best time of the year for you to go on retreat. But just make that promise to yourself that no matter what it is, whether it's spring or summer or a Saturday afternoon where you just concentrate on your creative life, or a big, large vacation, that you make a promise to yourself that every season you're going to revisit the idea of retreat. And in that revisitation, you can also then take stock of how you've changed throughout the year and how much you've produced, and then focus on the next goal. And even if you feel a little bit of theft of time, or you feel like, oh, how can I possibly do this? Or I feel a little like, do I even deserve this? That you understand that you're defining your own creative life as relevant. So if you're not getting anything out of it, then you have to start thinking about what is it that's stopping you? What is the worry that's stopping you, and how can you solve that worry? So you can make a general plan to go on retreat, but you should be prepared to pivot, because if you find that you signed up for this silent retreat and you don't want to be silent, you really do want to be in community with people, no one's keeping you there. You can change your mind. You have that ability. But can you stay in the moment and really think to yourself, what is it that I'm resistant to? And what is it that I really want? So that when you do, it's not the idea of going on retreat that's necessarily the problem, but the type of retreat. And maybe you need to change and shift your focus when it comes to how you're defining the word. Another thing that often comes up when I recommend people go on retreat is the idea of having to be a real artist. I just dabble. I just sketch in my sketchbook. It makes me feel good. I don't know what I would do if I had to go do that for an entire weekend. And the point is, you would just draw. You would just draw. And maybe you would recognize that you're the person who's not defining yourself as a quote unquote real artist. No one else is. If you tell people you're going to go away for the weekend and work on drawing and art, people are going to be excited for you. They're not going to think to themselves, look at her. What does she think she's up to? She thinks she's kind of a big deal. And I'm here to tell you, you are kind of a big deal. It is kind of a big deal to take yourself seriously and take your art seriously and take the thing that brings you joy seriously, no matter what it is. You can go rent a house with a big kitchen and go to the farmer's market every day and figure out every meal, and it can be just for you, and that is okay. I've gone on a couple of different kinds of retreats over the years, but I want to speak to two in particular. There's a place on Whidbey Island, which I if you've listened to the podcast or you follow me on Instagram or whatever, you've seen that I spend time at this place called the Writer's Cottage, and it's literally a one-room cottage on someone's property, a beautiful property, and that is for writers. That's what they created it for. So it has everything a writer could need: a nice desk, a good printer, a cozy place to read out on a deck, a place to make tea and coffee, and they even stock that stuff for you. So it's there, has a decent bathroom, a great bed, and it's a place to work. And Whidbey is one of my favorite places to go in general. There's a lot of writers who live on the island, and it takes writing very seriously. It's the home of a great women's retreat there called Hedgebrook, and David Whyte, the poet, lives there. There's so much art and music and literature going on the island, and I love going on retreat there. And I did it for the first time and really found myself in the right place, knowing that this is what my kind of retreat looks like. So what I did was I brought my guitar, I brought my computer, I brought the current book I was reading, and no other book. I brought my sketchbook and pens and a draft of something that I had been working on, because I wasn't sure what piece of writing I wanted to focus on, but I had a list of things I wanted to accomplish. And I would get up and I would make my tea and I'd do a little reading and I'd do a little writing and I would stay in my pajamas and I would work until, I was hungry, and then I would eat a little something and I would work. And then every evening I would take myself out to dinner and have a glass of wine and before dinner, I would take myself on a walk at the beach and go back and do the same thing that night. Draw a little, write a little, play guitar a little, whatever it was that spoke to me as the weekend went. And I spent 3 nights there, and it was a very powerful experience, both as a mom, because you realize when you are doing things for yourself only, how heartfelt every moment feels, how powerful and how healing it all feels to you. And there's times when you feel like you're missing an appendage, because you feel like there's a million things you should be taking care of, but you know what? Everybody was fine. Everybody was fine. And I would check in with them once a day, and it was great. And they were asking me about what I was writing and what I was doing and whether it was cool and was the house cool and how's the beach and did I see any otters and all of the things that they're curious about. But it also says to you as an artist that they are seeing you with a new different pair of glasses than they usually see you. And they're seeing you take care of yourself. There's a wonderful podcast called Artist Mother, which I recommend to everybody. And I remember this interview, and I don't remember who it was with. I'd have to go back and see. But I do remember as she grew up, her mother was a painter, and she grew up where her mom would go to be an artist in residence for, a month or a semester or a year as she got older in all of these different colleges and experiences, different, artist colonies. And it was just part of what it meant to be an artist for her. And what it meant was that her mom would go on these periods of being away from her, and it was okay. Her father took care of her during those times, and they could visit and they could talk to her. But it was about this ownership of her mother's experience as being part of the human experience. It wasn't separate from her mom just because she was her mom. She was allowed to be in that artist experience. And that changed the way she thought of herself. It changed the way she thought of family structure, the way she thought of partnership. And I'm very lucky, of course, to be married to another artist so we honor those times for each other, so that if he wants to go away and focus on songwriting for a weekend, it's not a big deal. And if I want to do the same, it's not a big deal. And it took me a very long time to get to that point, to take that time for myself. And so I'm encouraging anybody who has not done that to please do it, even if it's for a night at a hotel by yourself, with your book, with your poems, with your art, with whatever it is that brings you joy or rejuvenates you. Going to take yourself out to an expensive meal because you enjoy food and you really want to explore something new. It doesn't matter how your retreat looks, as long as it serves that purpose of rest, learning, and productivity. And this fall, I thought, okay, I won't go to the writer's cottage. I'll go to a writer's conference instead, and that'll be a sort of retreat. And wasn't the same for me. It didn't feel the same. And even though I learned things and I met great people, what it did was I came home with more of that momentum spark where I was like, okay, now I want to do this, that, and the other. I need, I'm all inspired, but it didn't really have those periods of working that I need or require from retreat to really feel excited and at peace. I have ideas all day long. The ideas are not the problem. It's the endurance to be productive that I need to work on. And so again, it comes back to sort of knowing what you need. And you won't know what you need unless you go on retreat to do these things. Then you can say, okay, the next time I do this, I'm not going to invite my friends. I'm going to go by myself. Or you know what? I do need some social activity. I'm going to go somewhere by myself, but I'm also going to go see like a poetry reading, or I'm going to go out and see live music, or I'm going to meet some friends for one night of it. And understanding that balance between your inner work and the things that you use to inspire you and propel you forward. Because retreat can be two things. It can be you in relationship with yourself and you in relationship to others. But I would also say, don't judge yourself for what you end up with at the end of it. You know, there's no supposed to. It's like, oh, I'm going on this retreat. I was going to have this great draft, and I actually didn't end up doing that at all. I wrote 10 poems, and that's all I ended up with. I mean, that's okay. Ray Bradbury says the best way to get a good idea is to get away from it. So the idea of just even moving away from what it is you intended and coming into relationship with what it is that actually happened and providing yourself that break from your usual routine is an essential part of being an artist and being creative. And so thinking about your appetite and your obsessions and your devotions to the work are part of it. And don't do anything because you feel you're supposed to. Do it because you are compelled to, because it's moving you in a direction that you feel compelled to move into. And so what I would encourage you to do by the end of the year, by the end of 2024, so you have lots of time left, no matter what the stores are telling you, you have lots of time before New Year's. Months, plan a retreat. Plan your time away. Whatever that looks like for you, whatever you can handle right now with your responsibilities and your financial situation, plan your retreat. An afternoon, a day, a night, a weekend, a week, a month, whatever it is, make the plan, honor the plan, and feel the magic that will come out of it. I hope you're well, and I'll speak to you next week. Thanks for listening to The Literary Sipper. I hope you enjoyed this episode and learned something new. If you did, please subscribe and leave a rating and review if you're feeling especially generous. Until next time, keep reading, keep writing, and keep putting your voice in the world. It's waiting for you.